A very fine good morning to all of you. Welcome to this first academic session. The deliberations we'll have in this session are centered around the basic theme of transforming human mind. Every human being having the sparks of divinity belong to one family, one community, where all the factors responsible for divide or fragmentation are to be discouraged and efforts are to be taken with an aim to minimize their edge, their effectiveness in a society shared by different individuals that have affiliation to diverse ideological, religious, social, political affiliations. But since all belong to one family, so all the profane considerations, which often are very significant in terms of the social atmosphere we are living in, their edge and effectiveness are to be minimized. If we dream to live in a society which is pluralistic, universalistic, and cosmopolitan in nature, the path would be made easy and the sailing easier if we adhere to the true spirit of religion and the vision regarding theology that is given by the original sources, comprehending the gist and essence of the theological projections without any prejudice to one's own beliefs inherited by him in a particular given society. This is what the humanity needs today the most. The humanity which has seen ugly faces of wars, terrorist attacks, communal divide, and manslaughter, value slaughter in modern times, coupled with the onslaught of positivist attitudes in society, or the laissez-faire attitude in terms of morality. The first step in this direction would be how to transform this mind. Because the mind we have, every individual among us, the mind he has, it has been constituted by his particular beliefs, by the doctrines, by the social and religious rituals, by the particular Dharma Shastra and its givens to which he is born, and usually he doesn't go practically beyond that. This is true with regard to any individual, whether he is categorized in a particular community of Muslims or Hindus or Parsis or Christians or the Jews. He adheres to the beliefs simply because he has inherited these beliefs. Seldom we find a person in any religions of the world who has questioned the authenticity or reliability of his beliefs, or probed his beliefs on the mental criteria or in very simpler words, he has meditated over them, applied his mind, his questioning mind, whether this thing, this belief we have in our mind, I have inherited it, whether I can prove it in terms of logics, in terms of analysis, can I analyze it in terms of academics or prove it with some proofs? This is a big question, a big phenomenon. What I take for granted is this is a big layer of ignorance. Although we claim to be the scholars, but with our practical prejudices, which often we justify, taking resort to our theological propositions, seldom we do have any courage to cut the icebergs. So here lies the big responsibility of how to transform this mind. Transforming this mind or transforming the mind for what? For conceiving the reality as it is the reality. But again, here we find some layers of relativity. And to sum up this, I would like to say that while we are transforming the mind of a Muslim or a Hindu or a Christian or any person belonging to any religious denomination, what do you actually mean by that? Do you want a universal religion with unified codes of conducts and rituals, shunning all of the things which we have inherited, going to mosque and offering the prayers or namaz as it is with the Muslims, going to the temples and offering prayers to the idols as it is with the Hindus, or any other forms of prayers or the canonical rituals? Are we supposed to shunning all these things? In my view, this is not the goal or the desired goal, because for all practical purposes it would be impossible. Neither it is epistemologically feasible. So what is desired here and everywhere in this warring world is that we are producing mind, so the minds that would be trying with sincerity to understand the other, as if he was also the reflection of the self, because we all reside in the bosom of the divinity that is pure and that is infinite, that is ultimate. So all these deliberations are aiming at this gigantic task. Now, the scholars would be given. We have 3 scholars here who will be presenting their views. The first is Dr. G. Ganeshan, Ashokan, will be speaking on vision of Srinara Guru on spiritual education.
Mugam karoti vachalam pangum lenghayate girim yatkripah tamaham vande paramananda madhava ajnanatibirandhasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshurunnilidam yena tasmai shri gurave namah. Most respected chairperson, dear Tariq Hussein, dear Santosh, eminent scholars, at the outset, let me express my gratitude to the organizers of this international conference, which is an epoch in the history of, which is going to be an epoch in the history of Kerala. I said this because even though it is a part of India, it has got its own identity and its own socio-political, economic and cultural backgrounds. It is after analyzing the socio-political and cultural backgrounds of the past that I have prepared this paper to present the vision of Srinara Guru on spiritual education. There is a limit of time, so with your permission, let me read out the paper so as to avoid digression. Vision of Srinara Guru on spiritual education. The present century humanity is passing through an acute crisis. On the one side, we are witnessing the rapid advancement of technology through the development of science. On the other side, spiritual values are crumbling down in the wake of the fast-moving pace of technological development and industrialization programs. The new forces in the graphs had their birth first in Europe and later in other parts of the Western world. Now, it has a revolutionary effect at the global level. The intellectual forces of science and socio-political forces of technology have devastating effects on human life. The new forces could not be assimilated to the religious or spiritual consciousness. Lust for power, productivity, satisfaction of needs, and excessive consumption have resulted in the erosion of moral values, varying from reckless hedonism to a cynical moral vacuum. The grave problems of corruption, alarming disparity between haves and have-nots, casteism, racism, sexism, and terrorism are threatening humanity. Human adjustments to this fast-moving social and cultural milieu is becoming increasingly difficult. In the absence of such adjustments, man succumbs to frustration, tension, and sorrow. Everybody in this devastating situation expects the value of education of some kind or other to address the challenge. But the prevailing mechanistic approach in education, although called scientific, has ended in the accumulation of sterile, impersonal, quantitative data and leaves personality totally outside discussion. Educationalists have avoided reference to the personal factor or the very core of human existence. The important human values and the optimum of life are glaringly omitted from the program of education. The youth coming out of their formal education are obsessed by pride or confusion. In situations of chaos and confusion, people relinquish their hopes on religious leaders for a solution, since majority of leaders and propagators of institutionalized specific religions ignore the inner core of religions and engage themselves in the dissemination of externalistic, ritual-centered customs and practices, breeding prejudice, hatred, and malice. Their hidden agenda is to make use of religion as an instrument for establishing socio-political supremacy. So, an alternative, all-inclusive spiritual education which has a universal appeal to enhance the value of man along with his scientific knowledge is the need of the day. The universal and human basis of education should prepare him to live a better life. In this context, the vision of Srinara Guru on spiritual education deserves special attention. Now the second part. In the second part, I am going to give a brief description of Srinara Guru from the point of view of his vision of education. Srinara Guru was born in a remote village called Chembadandi on 26th August 1854, and he passed away at Shivagiri on 28th September 1928. I stated this because this after his birth, 1 year after his birth, that slavery was abolished in Kerala. Now we are celebrating that year. For convenience, we can say that Srinara Guru was an ascetic, that is a sannyasi. And to that extent, he is psychologically comprehensible. But even as an ascetic, it is not so easy to define him. He was a social reformer in his outer state of consciousness, and in his inner consciousness, he was oblivious to all that. In him, we see a mystic, a philosopher, a visionary, a poet, an annihilator of superstitious beliefs, and above all, a social reformer who wished to transform the Indian social reality in all its dimensions. His life was an illustration of what he taught. He represents one of the most significant spiritual masters in the whole history of Indian religion. Srinarayana Guru, as a philosopher, stands with the Indian defenders of the Vedic Upanishadic philosophy represented by the Jnanavadins. He was an Advaitin with all its perfection. He had himself declared that he was a follower of Sri Shankaracharya, the incarnate of compassion. So, Srinarayana Guru's Advaita is what Sri Shankara has told of Advaita. There is no conceptual distinction between the two, and there cannot be any distinction between the two, since both are ultimately Advaitins. Advaita philosophy of Srinarayana Guru has found its finest expression in his compositions in Sanskrit, Malayalam, and Tamil. Sri Shankaracharya revalidated and restated the Vedic wisdom that was relevant and comprehensible to the thought patterns of his age. He declared through his non-dual philosophy that the highest goal of life is spiritual liberation, that is mukti, and the way to attain mukti is the knowing process, that is jnana marga. But the sociological aspect of knowledge was kept outside the discourse of epistemology. Perhaps it may be argued that the socio-political situation during the time of Sri Shankaracharya would not have become so rigid and vitiated as in the later period, or the prevailing system of his time would have been inadequate to do justice to the problem of social education and socio-political rights of the denominators of the society. But the significant point is that his main focus was on man-making education and not social transformation. However, contrasting the centrality of ritual acts among the ritualists, knowing was central to the teachings of Sri Shankaracharya. This paradigm shift was a landmark which brought about a fundamental change in the Indian thought. He preached a new way of disciplined life based on knowing in such a way that it finally and irrecoverably liberates the knower from the unpleasant state of experiences of continued birth and rebirth. Elsewhere, in his commentary on Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Sri Shankaracharya says that there are no gods and demons other than man. Thus, Sri Shankaracharya opened the way. Sri Narayana Guru went on the way. His main focus was the human betterment. Unambiguously, he declared that whatever might be the religion, man must excel. Madamedayalum Manishyan Nanayal Madi. The main distinction of Sri Narayana Guru was that he addressed the sociological aspect of epistemology and restated the Hindu Dharma of inclusion in place of exclusion. In fact, the Indian wisdom, right from the Vedic period, upheld the philosophy of inclusion.
Indian spiritual wisdom at its core was that of concordance and not discordance. As one who stood above all claims of religious exclusivity, he argued that the essence of all religions is one. He also stated that it is not possible for one religion to fight and win over another religion. That was the belief of Srinara Guru. He accepted, his religious belief was not the acceptance. He did not advocate religious tolerance, but the acceptance of all religions. In fact, based on this conviction, he gave a new practical orientation to the Vedic Upanishadic philosophy to solve almost all the problems in the conduct of human life. Now let us come to his vision on spiritual education. The accepted dictum, war begins in the minds of men, conversely admits that the solutions to the world problems are of spiritual order, while the philosophy of dialectic materialism, which places primacy on hunger, follows a different approach. But both these can be reconciled in the unitive approach to world problems as implied by Advaita Vedanta. If only man learn to cultivate the unity vision, then only he will be able to live a better life with a dignity embedded in universal human values, eliminating parochial deep-rooted barriers of nationalistic, ethnic, linguistic, and many other divisive tendencies extending up to religious terrorism of termination. A close understanding of the educational vision and programs of Srinara Guru reveals that his basic assumption of education implies in itself two distinct aspects. The first is the pursuit of man to know himself and the universe and to relate himself with the universe to the highest level possible, culminating in ultimate freedom. In the terminology of Advaita Vedanta, it can be called Mokshitva or Brahma Jijnasa. In Western terminology, in Western philosophy, it can be equated with disinterested curiosity. Srinara Guru, in his introductory verse on Brahma Vidya Panchakam, makes explicit this idea. The second is the pursuit for the accumulated practical knowledge, that is Prayoga Vijnana, of the past for material progress and welfare, that is Abhyudaya. This type of curiosity, which is common to most pupils, can be called practical curiosity. Taking into account these two distinct basic aspects of knowledge acquisition, Srinara Guru has envisaged a bipolar system of spiritual education. So, the first two streams of education. One is the education in ashramas. He envisaged that those who are endowed with disinterested curiosity should have real spiritual education, and they should have special centers for that. With that idea, he introduced ashramas. The model ashramas are the Advaita Ashrama at Alve and the ashrama with its Brahma Vidyalaya at Shivagiri. That is the first type of education that he introduced for the renunciates or the brahmacharis. Second is the education as an integral part of the social education, or what we call the citizenship education. Education is oftenly called citizen-making education. Srinara Guru taught citizen not as a citizen that is the citizenship that is being granted by the Constitution of India at the age of 18 or the Grihastha of the past Indian tradition, but a world citizen. In order to taking into consideration the social condition, social structure of the Kerala society during his time, he found temples as the best choice for imparting spiritual education to the common man. The model temple that he consecrated was the Shiva Temple at Arivipuram in 1888. It was a symbolic act. It was a revolutionary act because there was no priest. It was only a stone that was consecrated there. So many things has to be told about the temple. He wrote some words on the walls of the temple. I may read out that. This is the model place where we all will live in brotherhood without distinction of caste and religion. He thought these temples should be centers of vocational training, and he also emphasized the need of gardens, libraries, and agriculture farms connected to temples. Thus, he brought about a radical change in the temple culture. He avoided the expensive ritualistic culture, and he followed the rituals of bhakti movements. In his vision, the two basic ideals for human progress are knowledge and unity. He told that get enlightened by knowledge, get strengthened by unity, and prosper by work. With these words, may I conclude my paper for the time being.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ashokan, for introducing to us the salient features of the vision which Sri Narayana Guru has presented to us in the field of spiritual education or the value education on the lines drawn from Nyayavad Vedic system of value education, and not simply theorizing in the field, rather doing the basic work of establishing ashrams in which the man overcomes the killing features of demons residing in himself in the light of the guidance provided by the gods that reside in himself. Since there were no gods and no demons other than man himself. Thank you very much for this brilliant presentation. Now the next speaker is Dr. Tariq Hussein. He'll be speaking on the Gandhian model of spiritual education. I would ask him to introduce himself in a minute, then proceed with his speech.
My name is Tariq Hussein. I am doing PhD at Shankara University. Really, it is a privilege to participate and conduct seminar at Chinmaya because it is a holy place of Shankara. My paper is All-Inclusive Universal Spirituality, Thinking with Mahatma Gandhi. The meaning of the all-inclusive means the comprehensive or complete, wide-ranging or broad. These are the meanings of inclusive. And the spirituality, the meaning of spirituality means religion, theology, holism, mysticism, etc. So, the title is the All-Inclusive Universal Spirituality, Thinking with Mahatma Gandhi. This paper studies and analyzes how Gandhi unites the universal spiritual elements existing in different religions from the philosophy of the world. It is viewed that an eclectically grounded spiritualism is necessary in the contemporary context of human fragmentation caused by the society. The ongoing fragmentation of knowledge is one of the serious concerns of the contemporary world, and it has resulted chaos in the world. So really the fragmentation of knowledge is really threatening the society, and the world is facing a chaos. So it is here the Gandhian studies is relevant. The word religion derives from the two Latin roots. Re means again and ligare to unite or to bind together, signifying that it is an essential the principle of unification and harmonization. It is the binding force which unites man to society, man to the mystery, man to the mystery surrounding the universe. The Dharma is the word often used for religion in Sanskrit. It comes from the root dar, which means to support or to sustain or to keep in due order. The etymology itself indicates the real notion of Dharma. It is apprehended to be that which upholds the universe in due order. According to S. Radhakrishnan, it is the norm which sustains the universe, the principle of a thing in virtue of which it is what it is. Let I introduce some objectives behind this paper. The first objective is to brief all inclusive universal spirituality in Gandhian ideals. And the second one, to show how to overcome the sectarian and dogmatic approach in spiritual message. It is the faults of the society, it is not the faults of spiritual message. To assess how all-inclusive spiritualism influences the condition of society. To revise the values and change the political objectives. To lay emphasis on Gandhi's principle of ethical religion. To re-establish a complementary view for universal spirituality in which normative philosophical basis is crucial. For Gandhiji, religion does not mean any particular historical religion. It is not customary or formal institution. Gandhi stressed that religion should provide every one of our action. It is nothing but acceptance of God in one's life. Religion changes one's nature. It purifies him and makes him into close contact with his maker. In his opinion, no man can live without religion. Gandhi also considered morality as the essence of religion. And religion and morality are intimately connected and inseparable. He believed that those who led a good moral life is really religious. Whatever be their faith, since Gandhi laid more emphasis on morality in explaining his idea of religion, it is called ethical religion. Gandhi stated that there are many religions in the world. There is an identity in the essential moral principles of all religions. In his opinion, all the religions are man-made and different roads converging to the same point, God. So what we want is not mere tolerance but mutual respect. This attitude helps us to assimilate what is good in all religion. In short, Gandhi advocated Sarva Dharma Samabhava, which means the respect for all religions. According to Gandhi, the religion and morality are intimately related. True religion and true morality are inseparable. Religion is to morality what water is to the seed that is sown in the soil. To judge whether a doctrine is religious or irreligious, Gandhi's criterion is morality. Since Gandhi laid more emphasis on morality in explaining his idea of religion, it is called Gandhi's ethical religion. Gandhi considered altruism or selfless service to others as the highest form of religion. He believed that the ultimate aim, self-realization, can only be attained through selfless service to others. By doing service to others, we are doing service to God Himself. The Gandhian marga to moksha is selfless service to others. Gandhi believed that today politics encircle us like the coil of snake from which no man can get out. So the service of the people is impossible without touching the politics. He stressed that political activities should be derived from one's own religion. Moreover, we cannot separate human life into watertight compartments like social, political, economic, moral, etc. And it is an undivided whole, so we cannot separate religion from other activities of human life. That is why Gandhi said, the sum total of all those in me is my religion. Gandhi declares that human society has to be one and undivided. Whatever be the social, political, economic, religious compartment in which it is divided, he has deep-rooted faith in the truth of non-duality. Gandhi believes that all life in its essence is one and that the human beings are working consciously towards the realization of that identity. The novelty of Gandhian approach lies in the use of eclectically grounded spiritualism or integrated philosophy. His method was truth and non-violence. He also states that universal harmony can be achieved only through active love and peace. It is clear that he used broad precepts and religious laws to overcome hatred and conflicting views in different religions. Let us see some of his experience and stories behind his life. In the part 2 of the story of my experiments with truth, the chapter 22, the comparative study of religions, Gandhi mentioned the religious discussion with hostess. And when he read Arnold's Light of Asia, once we began to compare the life of Jesus with that of Buddha. Look at Gautama's compassion, said Gandhi. It was not confined to mankind, it was extended to all living beings. Does not one's heart overflow with love to think of the lamb joyously perched on his shoulders? One fails to notice this love for living beings in the life of Jesus. The comparison pained the good lady. I could understand her feeling. Gandhi cut the matter short and we went to the dining room. Gandhi said, Gandhi went to the dining room. At the same time, we could see the defects were evident in his own religion. Gandhi is mentioning it in his work also. At the same time, he could see defects were evident in his own religion. The Hindu defects were pressingly visible to Gandhi. If untouchability could be the part of Hinduism, it could be a rotten part. I could not understand the raison d'etre of a multitude of sect and caste. What was the meaning of saying that the Vedas were the inspired word of God? If they were inspired, why not the Bible and the Quran? Gandhi gained more knowledge from different religious ideals and practice. This incident itself is a great proof for the quest of truth in the comparative study of religion. In the chapter Spiritual Dharma, Gandhi states a devotee of truth shall open to the correction, and whenever he discovers himself to be wrong, he confesses it at all cost. This is itself a great example to show the flexibility or the open-minded nature of Gandhi. It was through Hind Swaraj he first announcing his life mission and the moral regeneration of the world. It was through this work he gives the world a practical philosophy and an updated concept of ethics that would fit them for the life in the world. It is necessary to say his attitude towards the modern civilization, though critical, it is not wholly negative. Being critical implies the desire to improve the object criticized. So Gandhi welcomes a number of its contribution from the West. The ideas of Gandhi have been widely used by different. In fact, Gandhi took a modern industrial civilization as harmful and dangerous not only for India, but also for the whole of mankind of the entire world, including the West. Gandhi affirmed that the Indian civilization is thoroughly based on morality and helps humanity to attain its highest goal. According to Gandhi, the man's ultimate aim is God realization. The realization of God means the realization of self, the self realization. So, all activity of man should be guided by this ultimate aim. Gandhi firmly believed that without truth it is impossible to observe any other principles or rules in life. So, one must observe the law of truth in thoughts, words, deeds to realize one's own self. It is really the self-realization which makes us close to the God realization. The relevance of Gandhi in modern era is that he preached and practiced a war without violence. In our present nuclear age, the available atom bombs with many a country are sufficient to destroy the whole world several times over. If Gandhi's fundamental principles of truth and non-violence are not accepted, the total annihilation of human race from the earth is certain. So we have to select between non-violence and non-existence. The reason for the present sad state of affairs in India is that we have forgotten or failed to study Gandhi's life message and object lessons. If we Indians do not care to study the heritage of the father of our nation, we will be like a person sitting under a burning streetlight in the shadow of a lamppost. So it is necessary for us to reopen the study about Gandhi and hold the debate on the manifesto of Gandhian revolution, namely Gandhi's booklet Hindu Swaraj or Indian Home Rule for Indians' freedom struggle. He emancipated an enslaved country from British yoke by efficiency yoke to service. Real or genuine love has a few distinct characteristics. It is love without the intention of possessiveness. Two things are liable to be possessed. One is the object of attraction or love. The possession of that object of love may turn out to be transient. The other thing is the inner calm. So genuine or real love is the attitude of stewardship, not of ownership. It consists of deep care and solicitude for the fullest growth and development of the loved. The other trait of the real love is absence of coercion. It consists in surrender with a semblance of fear. Another trait of real love is unconditionality. In the language of St. Paul, genuine love is love sans strings attached to it. Real love is distinct from the quality of endurance and constancy. Real love does not take advantage of or exploit the beloved. The most outstanding trait of real love is that it is mental and spiritual union and unity and unison. That is to say, the oneness of subject and object, lover and loved. Let us look what the former president, the APJ Abdul Kalam, has said that India's spiritual message is neither sectarian nor dogmatic. So let us see what Gandhi's outlook. Gandhi believed in the ecumenism and the unity of religions before ecumenism was born. Gandhi's religious concept was known as Sarva Dharma Samanatva. Gandhi ignored to all religions and he respected the best in all religions of the world. He has stated that his God was the God in the heart of millions. But in India, the concept of unity of religion is sought to be destroyed for selfish gains by a few political parties. Gandhi also states the liberation of individual was supreme aim in the journal Young India. He also mentioned that to realize God, self, and the truth are three expressions of the same development. It is here the RNAs, who is considered as the father of deep ecological movement, inspires Gandhi for his self-realization and transforms it into the ecological self-realization which view the self not separate or superior but small part of the entire cosmos. So even the world has itself realized the importance of Gandhi. It was the RNAs who took the self-realization principles of Gandhi and turned into the ecological self-realization. So RNAs made a substantial reorientation with its deep ecology.
Please conclude in 2 minutes.
It is possible to prevent the religious conflict existing in earth while accommodating a diverse group of religion if we adopt a new paradigm for philosophy of religion which is based on Gandhian ideals. It will contribute to education in all-inclusive universal spirituality. So people will begin to interact and develop solutions, which is the greatest challenge faced by humanity. This paper also aims to explore the ways to wipe away the religious conflicts prevailing in contemporary world through the application of Gandhian ideals. To sum up, I am using the Gandhi's words. It is good to swim in the waters of tradition, but to sink in them is a suicide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tariq Hussein, for presenting some aspects of the Gandhian vision of spiritual education. Mahatma Gandhi, the father of nation, had immense and invaluable imprints in all spheres of social, moral, political, intellectual, literary, and overall cultural life of the Muslims, of the Indians, and elsewhere in the world. You have given us general sketches of value education or the theory of value education of Gandhian vision. What one would like to learn is that after independence we have had tremendous marches in the field of education, in the fields of preparing the curricula, the infrastructure and the suprastructure. One wants to know at what extent the modern Indian educational systems introduced for training the young minds in schools and colleges in CBSE, at the CBSE pattern or NCRT pattern, which is predominant in North India. So, are there some clear imprints of Gandhi's influence or vision in the modern curricula we have in India? If this is so, then it would be greatest homage paid to Gandhian vision in modern India. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we'll be listening to the last speaker of this session, Mr. Santosh More, will be speaking on discipline and attainment of truth.
My name is Santosh More. I'm a student of Advaita Vedanta and currently studying in Karnataka Sanskrit University. I'm a PhD student over there. So I'll start my presentation, reading the paper with the prayers. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Karume Deva Sarvakareshu Sarvada. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Vang me manasi pratishtita Mano me vanchif pratishtitam Aviravirma edhi Vedasya maani istaha Shrutam me ma prahasihi अनेनाधीतेना होरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Respected chair and my co-speakers and all the scholars and Swami and brahmacharis that have assembled here. My paper is on discipline and attainment of truth. These are actually the thoughts that have been bothering me, and that's why I've been doing mananam or chintanam or thinking about it. So this is an expression of that. My friend will be actually going through the slides. Slides are just means to direct, and I'll be speaking on it. First slide, please. Generally, we have a notion of what is spirituality, and people have various definitions. What is the objective of spirituality? Obviously, we have that question. And there are different definitions of it, but obviously there is just one objective. It can be happiness or peace, attainment of truth. There are different names to it. Again, those have to be properly understood, but they pretty much mean the same thing. Just the previous slide. And what are the basic, I'm not able to say, anyways. So what are the different paths to the spirituality? Means because there are so many definitions of it. There are so many definitions of it, and there are a lot of speakers speaking about it, a lot of scholars talking about it, and they all say that there are various paths to the same goal. So this is pretty much an accepted viewpoint. Next slide. So what is the role of discipline, one may think, because spirituality and discipline somehow, or we generally accept that it goes hand in hand. So so what exactly is discipline, and what is the discipline? Again, can be defined or needs to be defined before it's discussed. In the context of my paper, it's the rules and regulations. In Sanskrit, vidhi and nisheda. Generally, those are the do's and don'ts. Those are the things. Those will be. That is the definition of discipline in this paper. And is discipline necessary or not? That is something that I wanted to express. More or less, I really want everyone's undivided attention, not because it's my paper, it's because I really need the input from you all. So I request that. Discipline in the transactional world has a great importance to achieve something that one has not achieved. Often, success of an individual, when analyzed, boils down to his efforts and, most importantly, focused and well-directed efforts. Focus and right direction implies not digressing or distracting from the path and following a certain ascertained path, which in other words means a disciplined way. As it has proved again and again in the world, discipline, generally, if someone is following discipline, he will be successful. It is not an overstatement to say that discipline and spirituality goes hand in hand. It is very rare to see a spiritual path that has no prescribed discipline or set of rules that one is generally expected to follow. In fact, the very word path in the spiritual path means a specific way. Now let's see discipline and its role in the light of Advaita tradition, because I'm taking that as the school of thought and having this discussion. Next slide, please. Advaita tradition of our Acharya Shankaracharya. The goal is Atyantika Dukkha Nivritti. Basically, the objective is peace, happiness, and the means to it. Obviously, if you have a goal, we need to have means. Means to it is Ajnana Nivritti or self-knowledge. It's the same thing. So that is basically the concept of Advaita Vedanta. So difference between two achievements. I have mentioned that heading because generally we have a concept, of course, if we are in the life, we want to become a PhD student, then we want to have a PhD, for example, or I want to have a business. So these are the material achievements. So obviously we lay down some rules and then we follow them, and those then we achieve our goal. So that's a material achievement. And also in spirituality, we have a goal. Generally, the highest goal we discuss, in our case, Ajnana Nivritti is the goal. So Advaita Vedanta, and I'll just talk about what I have mentioned, my thoughts on this. Advaita Vedanta talks about the truth which is indescribable. So I mean, it's just contradictory if you see it. It talks about the truth which is indescribable. But so that we have to understand from the word that all it does, it gives the pointers or it gives the lakshanas of the goal. Praptasya prapti is what Advaita Vedanta proclaims as the underlying seeking process, and it makes it very clear that it is not apraptasya prapti. Praptasya prapti means to have what we already have. Apraptasya prapti means to achieve what we don't have at the moment. The difference between the two is praptasya prapti is not achieving something that we don't have. Instead, because it's praptasya, it's already praptam. Instead, that which we are already. Hence, knowledge of the truth cannot fall under the regular process of laying down guidelines as we do for achieving material goals, where if we abide by certain rules of nature, we are bound to reach to that point of success in case of material achievements. Often, a student of Advaita Vedanta, having studied Shruti, understands, Shruti means Vedas, understands that the Atman is praptasya prapti, means we already are that, but behaves or acts as if Atman is apraptasya prapti, or behaves or acts as if I have to gain something. This conflict within can keep seeker in an eternal spiritual trap. It can be very confusing. Tremendous focus and guided effort is needed to achieve something that has not been achieved. In similar lines, focus and effort is needed to cognize something that we already have. But we have forgotten where it is. In Advaita, they give an example. For example, if I want to achieve something, so for example, I want to achieve PhD degree, I go to take admission, I find a good scholar, try to study with him. So there is a lot of research and going and getting it. But in case of praptasya prapti, also I have mentioned that it needs its focus and effort. So why do we need focus to have something that we already have? Then the explanation or an example of a necklace in the neck is given. Like you have the necklace on your neck, but you think you have lost it. So you're looking everywhere. So you have to a little bit calm down, you have to focus, and you need to know how the necklace looks. Only then, when we look here, oh, I have the necklace, that knowledge will happen. So that's the distinction that I wanted to make here. So, for any achievement, we need a tool. And obviously, a mind is the subtle tool or the sukshma tool that we have. So, mind always functions based on its conditionings. What is its field of achievements or what is its field of knowledge is something that I wanted to discuss here real quickly. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha it's a Taittiriya Shruti which proclaims that the truth cannot be grasped by mind. However, all the disciplines that one undertakes only are to tame the mind. Disciplines, nisheda and vidhi, it's only for mind. Do this, do that, control your senses. So, however, all the disciplines that one undertakes only are to tame the mind. So how does one reconcile the need of discipline for the mind, which cannot grasp the truth anyways because the Shruti is saying so? Is it just a waste of time and energy? All these great acharyas of Advaita and other traditions are laying down rules and regulations to achieve this truth. They are laying down a lot of rules and regulations. So it can be conflicting at times that Shruti which is the base of all the Acharya's explanation, is saying something, and are they contradicting to what the Shruti says? That cannot be possible. So let's give it a little deeper thought. Mind is a tool for analysis and for connecting things and events of so-called related object and so-called related events. Because they are not related, mind relates it. We all have that idea. These all events and objects are disparate or different, but we connect them. That's what mind does. Next slide. So mind and its pseudo-understanding. Because a lot of times we think we know, even in the material conversations, we say, yeah, I know, I've seen you yesterday, you were wearing this, we were so confident, but sometimes we are wrong. So what to talk about truth, which we understand from the great Acharyas. So we can have a pseudo-understanding and we can be very confident about it. That is the problem. So let's discuss a little bit of that. If one in the pursuit of truth, and if he goes by the gathered knowledge of truth, by reading books and analysis, here by saying, studying the scriptures, reading books, I'm not in any way condescending, putting it down. I want to just say that what are the traps that we can get in. That's the only intention. If one in the pursuit of truth, and if he goes by the gathered knowledge of truth by reading books and analysis, and will hope to see the truth based on what he or she thinks to see the truth should be, how the truth should be, it can be or it is a futile attempt, as one is just trying to compare the truth with what one thinks of what the truth should be. I know this is around lunchtime, it's a very difficult or subtle topic, but I want to say that generally when we read certain things, for example, I've heard about mango. Say, okay, mango looks yellow, it's like that. And I might see pumpkin, I might think it is mango. And I might see mango, but I may miss it out. So that's the only thing I'm trying to say here. That we have gathered the knowledge of truth from the books, and we expect the truth should be like that because we have trust and faith, and we need to have that. But the idea that I'm trying to say here is that it's just trying to compare the truth with what we think how it should be, not what it is, but how it should be. So because we have studied for a long time, we have discussed about it, so we are super confident about certain things, which can be a problem. So next slide, please. So mind's understanding, is it an obstacle? So obviously a question, is it an obstacle? The condition of mind in which it thinks it knows how truth should be itself can be limiting factor or a step of failure. As a matter of fact, there might be at times one might be in the seat of meditation, coming into face of the truth, but as it may not compare with the notion of the truth one entertains in his or her mind, one will remain in the state of ignorance, or has a chance of that. That is the challenge, that at times the knowledge gathered by studying scriptures comes in the way of cognition of truth and the seeker. Shruti Vakyas proclaiming the very nature of truth is not a problem, but how we understand it and take it and apply it is a problem. Hence, it is at most important, very important, that one studies under a teacher who has known the fact or the truth, and after the fact, he or she guides the student towards it. If not, it becomes a blind leading a blind. In Kathopanishad, there is a statement. The same scriptures which ask us to learn, they themselves are making us cautious about it. So what is the role of mind, conditioning and discipline? What is the role of it? As discussed above, that the truth cannot be grasped by mind, and we cannot lay down a certain path as we are that very self, the self of all. However, that also does not seem our current experience. Okay, we understand this is the truth, but that doesn't seem to be our experience. Our current experience or understanding is I'm limited, I'm self, I'm limited self, I'm happy, I'm sad, etc. So just to assume that I am self of all and imagine I'm free and liberated also is not a sensible approach, as this will again create conflicts in mind. There has to be a starting point. As we have this feeling that I am limited, to remove the false understanding, the process of so-called removing the ignorance is the process of Advaita Vedanta. That's a very underlying principle. If one does not begin towards the progress of removing the false notion, one may remain in the false notion of I am limited being. Now, I'm going to bring a topic. Its heading is left versus right. I'm using these terms left versus right because there are a lot of great acharyas, a lot of great realized people who have attained the truth, considering on the fact, because we don't have a meter where we take them and oh, he's attained the truth. Unfortunately or fortunately, we don't have that meter, so we don't know if he or she has attained the truth. But there are talks, when we are around them, the peace, everything seems to be that they know the truth. And then there are like people, great people like J. Krishnamurti, U.G. Krishnamurti, they talk about the truth and they denounce the Vedas. And then there are people who are strict followers of the Shruti Vakyas and they have also achieved it. So I'm just calling J.K. Krishnamurti and people like left. Just pardon my definitions but I just wanted to make that distinction. And right people are there. So the people who have achieved the truth, no problem. But the people who are in the process of achieving the truth, because there are people who see the people who are following the strict rules and discipline are very cold. And they say, if this is spirituality, I don't want to be with this. They have too much of do's and don'ts. I don't want that. And there are people who want to live just the way they want, and they like that. So that's the left and that's the right. So this is the case that is seen amongst the followers of thought of extreme left, which propagate the thought that nothing needs to be done. We are free. Just be and be in the moment. It's very catchy nowadays. Often, such instruction can be very dangerous, as this also creates a conflict in seeker, as this is opposed to their experience. On the other hand, to push oneself to extreme torture of strict discipline and to expect self-realization of truth to happen in a certain way because one is following or adhering to the strict rules of discipline is also a trap in itself. That's why one has to start at a point studying under a competent teacher, very important, competent teacher, who has seen the truth and studied the scriptures. There is a term called Brahmanishta Shrotriya, who can guide the student to walk the path of discipline and at a point tell him to leave the parts of discipline or intellectual understanding of truth which can come in his way of sakshatkara of the truth. When one arrives or comes in face to face to the truth or realization, one invariably proclaims that there can be no path to the truth, which we are already. How can there be a path for the place where we have already arrived? However, this one can only say when one has cognized that or one has reached there. If, for lack of better terms, I'm using the word reach there. Till that point, one has to follow through the hoops of several sadhanas and discipline only to know that it is not a necessary factor. It's an oxymoron statement, only to know that this was not needed. We have to go there to know that we didn't have to go there. We didn't have to walk this way. Hence, as the knowledge of truth is not a result of actions, hence prescribing strict discipline to attain the truth needs to be carefully thought through. However, disciplines can create an environment of knowledge to happen, and hence it has a place in equation. So the point that I'm trying to make is here that yes, we are saying that we don't need any rules and regulations really to achieve that, but we have this experience that I'm limited, so we need to follow certain rules and regulations, but then we have to drop them, or it gets dropped at certain point only to realize. So we cannot start with the fact that I know it already, and that would be disastrous. So that's the factor, when to drop and hold. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that invariably, and this is the paper has been focused towards the serious students of all the traditions who are sincerely wanting to achieve that truth, because they are invariably the ambassadors of that particular path. Because if we see a spiritual person who is doing something that we don't think he or she should be doing, we check mark and give him or her a tag or give the whole tradition attack that this is wrong and these people are like that. So that's why we have the onus of how we represent. So we have to have a proper understanding. That's where the focus is. So Swami Chinmaya, I just remember, Swami Chinmayananda always used to give this example of discipline is like a pole vault, where you take this pole and go and you take the pole and you put it in the ground and then you release the pole to go over. If you hold to the pole, you're going to fall down, maybe on your face. So it is important that you leave the pole. So I'm trying to give the analogy of discipline as the pole. And then there will be a little bit of consideration of what is the discipline, its role, and the people who have attained the truth. Because if a person who has attained the truth, if he or she says, if he or she has realized that there is no discipline needed, then why he or she follows the discipline after knowing the truth? We have seen that in the case of Acharyas, they have been also giving us that instructions. So
2 minutes.
Yeah.
Please summarize.
Yes. Thank you. So after the sakshatkara or knowledge of the truth, its remember itself is abiding. There's no action needed, or I need to remember, or I am that. There's nothing of that kind needed. So just its remembrance is knowledge. And hence there is no discipline needed to be followed by a realized one. And even if it is followed, it is mere for teaching purposes, so that the students on the path can follow that. Because that person who knows the truth, really, he doesn't have to practice compassion. It is natural. He doesn't have to practice non-violence. It is natural. He doesn't have to do anything unnaturally. It is all natural. But he has to do it, certain things. Sandhya Vandanam, for example, this, that, just so that the students follow that. And as I mentioned earlier, these disciplines will create an environment for that cognition to happen. That's the only purpose. There's no other purpose, according to my view over here. So, and also in Bhagavad Gita, it's called Yad Yad Acharati Shrestha. For example, if a realized spiritual master starts going to some wrong places according to what we term wrong and right, people will have a very good reason to do that. We all general trained minds want to do that. Just unfortunately or fortunately, that's the tendency that we go there. So hence there is no discipline needed to be followed by the realized one, and even if it is followed, it is mere for teaching for the students who are on the path. If not, it can confuse the students. But those disciplines can never bind that realized one. So we also often see some people who have realized and they do certain things at some time and then they don't do, which confuses us, but they are not bound by the disciplines, what they are generally prescribing. They are not bound by it. As a liberated one is free from the dictates of his or her own mind, and discipline is nothing but a conditioning of mind. Hence, discipline is necessary till a point where it does not come in its way. Discipline is like a pole vault, as I mentioned. It needs to be dropped to take that leap. Discipline is conditioning of mind and its limitation. One has to keep this in mind and walk towards the path. Not to follow the discipline is a very easy thing. If I open a new ashram and I say no discipline is needed, it will be very popular because we don't like discipline. Discipline is conditioning of the mind and it has its limitation. One has to keep this in mind and walk towards a path. Not to follow the discipline can be a very easy task which ignorant mind of the seeker would verily enjoy. But a wise seeker should know the traps and should seek knowing of when to drop the discipline. Rather, one cannot go any further if one is trapped in the strict rules and regulation, in other words, conditioning of mind. So that's my whole view here. Discipline is needed at the beginning, but a serious seeker should drop it, or rather it drops. And then because that person lives in the society, he or she verily becomes compassionate, everything. So everything is natural. So if we have more and more of such people who have this greater and deeper understanding, I think there won't be any discussions because they verily know that everything is connected. So there won't be, we don't really try to say, I don't want to hurt my hand because it's my hand. So it becomes very natural. So that's the very teaching of our Acharyas. With this, I want to thank my Sadguru Gajanan Maharaj my teacher from Chinmaya Mission, Swami Advaitananda, my Acharya, my teacher, Dr. Shiva, and Dr. Srinara. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I thank all the three scholars for their academic presentations, and I thank the audience for their attentive listening to these presentations. I thank you for this active participation in this very process of meditation, active academic meditation. Thank you very much.